heard it. I heard it.
Services Committee. We are here. We have one item on our agenda. Just pull it up. I apologize. Have the item number in front of me. What's the item number, Jacqueline?
It is item 207-23. Do you want me to read the item in?
No, I have the language in the petition. I didn't have the docket item in front of me. Okay, so the one item we are here for is item 207-23. This is the citizens petition. I'll read the petition in a moment. Before I begin, I want to say that like many of you who are here who have heard of the tragic deaths of Lucia Arpino, Gilda D'Amore, and Bruno D'Amore, I'm also sickened and devastated by the murders that took place in Newton. I find it extremely unfortunate that there is a community meeting at the same moment that we are having this public hearing. However, we are somewhat required to continue to hold this public hearing, and I'll go through a couple of dates in a moment, but the reason why we're going to continue tonight and move forward with this, there are a couple of reasons. So first and foremost, let me say that there are legal requirements around the filing of a citizen's petition. There are deadlines by which the city council has to act. So this petition was filed on May 12th, which under the Newton City Charter means that we have to, the full council must act on this by August 12th. Working backwards from that, the only city council meeting that we have in between now and August 12th will occur on July 10th. Prior to the city council meeting on July 10th, the Programs and Services Committee has to act on this item, and the only meeting that the Programs and Services Committee has before July 10th is tonight. In addition to that, we are, as I said, legally required to publicly notice and hold a public hearing. We provided that notice 2 weeks ago, as we are required to, providing today as the date for that public hearing. So for all those reasons, we're going to continue with our public hearing tonight as we've legally noticed, and hopefully continue on a process that allows the city council to comply with the charter and act on this item in time. Let me quickly introduce members of the committee who are here tonight. I know we're going to be joined by a couple more who I think have either conflicting events or will be at that community meeting and then joining us afterwards. I know that with us at the moment from Ward 2, President Albright, from Ward 6, the Vice Chair of the Committee, Brenda Noel, from Ward 7, Councillor Lyle Baker, from Ward 8, Councillor Holly Ryan. I'm the Chair of the Committee, Josh Krinsman from Ward 4. I know that Councillors Julia Maliki and Lenny Gentile are also here, and also a member of the committee from Ward 3, Councillor Pam Wright, is with us. If there are other councillors who I have not pointed out, I apologize, please let me know, but that is who I see at the moment. Our process for tonight is going to be to provide anyone who wishes to speak on the petition. Again, I'll read the petition in a moment. Anyone who wishes to speak can have up to 3 minutes to provide comments. I'm going to ask that you raise your electronic hand. The way to do that is usually down at the bottom of the screen. It either says raise hand or it says something along those lines, right? If anyone has trouble raising their hand or doesn't know how to, you can, wave in the box, and I will make note of the fact that you wish to speak and put you in order as well. Let me now go ahead. Folks are welcome to start raising their hands. That's absolutely fine. And I'll get to those, like I said, in just a moment. Let me read the petition that we're seeking comments on tonight, and then we'll proceed to the public comment portion. So the petition says, in accordance with Article 10, Section 10-2 of the Newton Charter, each of the undersigned requests that the City Council of the City of Newton pass the following measure. The Tree Preservation Ordinance, Chapter 21, Article 3, Division 3, shall apply protection regulations to all healthy, not dangerous trees 6 inches DBH in diameter at breast height and larger on all properties in the City of Newton not owned by the state or federal government. These regulations shall also include the following requirements. The environment and health damages to abutters and the larger community of tree removal must be mitigated through planting replacement trees and/or cash payment into the city's tree fund. Payment or replacement trees may only be waived if the application process provides acceptable certification that the protected tree is dead, diseased, or dangerous, or that removal of the protected tree will improve the overall health of the tree canopy. Trees on lots adjacent to construction sites must be protected from damage. And owners of abutting properties shall be notified of each tree removal application. So again, that is the petition. Again, we'll be providing up to 3 minutes for each public comment. Let me first see if there are any questions from committee members or fellow councilors or any comments they'd like to make. Councilor Noel?
Thanks so much, Chair Krinsman. So I just have a process clarification question.
Sure.
So this docket item we're hearing about because there was a petition with 50 signatures, is that correct?
That's correct.
So this is the item that we've spent the better part of, I think, 6 meetings going through line by line and taking straw polls in this committee and determining the best way to move forward. Is this the same item?
So it is on the same topic, but it is a different item. So there are now essentially 3 items. There is a docket item that was filed by Deputy Commissioner Welch. There's a docket on this topic. There's a docket item filed by Councilors Norton and Maliki. We have been taking up those 2 docket items simultaneously and going through the proposals in those. That's the one that we've spent close to 18 hours of committee time going through and evaluating. And then in addition to that, there has now been a citizens petition filed by 50 citizens or more, requires us to have a public hearing and act on that petition by August 12th.
And if you'd indulge me to follow up on that. So the citizens petition, has it already gone through law? Would it pass the legality test?
I have not received any comments from the law department.
So we don't know if we can even enforce the citizens petition.
Well, the citizens petition asks the city council to pass an ordinance.
Okay. Is there a simple way, or maybe we have to get into this testimony to understand the distinctions? Or is that too complicated? If it is, just tell me it is.
Well, the docket item is far more specific and far more prescriptive than the language in the petition. The language in the petition outlines those 4 sort of criteria which are being requested or which are being sought by the petitioners. That any tree ordinance modification ought to include those four.
And maybe the testimony will speak to this, but let me just say up front, for those folks who want to speak tonight, if you watch the testimony, not the testimony, pardon me, if you watch the 18 hours of deliberation, the thinking was, what could we legally pass that was gonna meet the legal requirements of law, and what could we get through the full council, and that was going to get the votes of the full council and would not be vetoed by the mayor. So just to provide that context, because I do think, Chair, you mentioned we spent 18 hours of really thoughtful deliberation if you watched any of this. And I want to, this isn't our first bite at this apple tonight. I just want to make sure folks are aware of that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Noel. Councilor Wright, did you have a comment before we get started?
Yes, please. I just want to confirm what I thought I heard you say, that there won't be any way to keep this open because of the community meeting going on, because of the time constraints that we have to get things done.
So I believe that our time constraints are such that this committee should act on this petition tonight, because we need to present this to the full city council, and the only full city council meeting that will take place prior to the deadline for the full council to act on this is on July 10th.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Councilor Ryan?
Yeah, just procedurally, is the clerk gonna run a time clock for people to see, a stopwatch?
Jacqueline, I believe you're prepared with a 3-minute clock, correct?
Yes, I am.
Great.
All right.
Councilor Maliki?
I was just wondering if there was any way to keep the public hearing open, since it's already been noticed, if there was an extra meeting between now and July 10, because of all, there's probably a lot of people at Horace Mann, and having to choose between that, and this was not a good choice.
Yep. So as I just sort of went through, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of time on the calendar that enables us to hold this open and to still act before July 10th.
Okay, well, I want to let the public speak anyway, so, okay, thanks.
Okay, Councilor Baker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think for those who are concerned about the lack of the public hearing staying open, the committee will take some action tonight, and then it's reported to the city council. So it's always possible for any citizen who is not able to participate to communicate to the city council directly through the clerk or through the email that we have, so that it doesn't mean that your testimony will not be received. It just will not be received by the committee. So I just think that's important distinction to make, so that people don't feel that they're disenfranchised completely by the unfortunate and very tragic circumstances that causes a number of people with good cause not to be here. Is that fair?
That's fair. Thank you, Councilor Baker. Appreciate you pointing that out. Email is always an option. I also want to point out that our intention, although we haven't finalized the agenda, the intention is for the Programs and Services Committee at our August meeting to take public comments on the other two docket items that Councilor Noel referenced earlier, that the committee has been working on. We have not yet taken public comments on those, but had committed to taking public comments. And the intention at the moment is to receive those in August. So again, on the same topic, there will be more opportunities for public comment. All right, I don't see any other councilors or any other process questions. So I think we'll get to the purpose of tonight, to hear from the public. So if I apologize if I get names wrong here, but Quentin Zondervan, you're the first name I have up. If you don't mind giving us your name and address, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quentin Zondervan, Cambridge City Councilor at 235 Cardinal Medeiros Avenue in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I was invited to join you all by my dear friend, Councilor Emily Norton, who herself can't be here because of the tragic circumstances you all just discussed. But I'm hoping to provide some information for you based on our experience in Cambridge, where we have a very similar ordinance in effect since 2020. And to my knowledge, we have not had any legal challenges to our ordinance, which does charge people about $2,000 per diameter inch if they cut down a tree that is not dead or diseased, or cut it down without a permit. Now, we did enact a resident discount of 90%, so that if someone is a Cambridge resident who cuts down such a tree, then they would only pay $200 per square inch roughly. We also added provisions whereby replacement trees count towards the fee that's owed. So if someone legally cuts down a tree that's over 6 inches that is otherwise healthy, but they agree to plant replacement trees, they can count those trees against the fee that they would owe and subtract from that diameter inch total. We also created, through a nonprofit that I serve on the board of called Green Cambridge, a program called Canopy Crew, where we train our high school students, volunteers, to plant trees on private property for free, so that people can request a tree, and then working with the city, we will plant those trees for them at no cost to the property owner. So the main problem that we had identified was that developers would buy up properties, cut down the trees, and then refurbish or rebuild the building and then sell it. And so those developers, assuming they are not resident on the property, would pay a full $2,000 per diameter inch if they were to do that. And we do believe that it has led to a reduction in that practice. I'm certainly happy to answer other questions you may have, or to testify at your August hearing if that's helpful. But I'll say in closing that we've found our ordinance to be very successful and very popular. Not to say that there are no detractors, but overall we have had a lot of success with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Zondervan, and please send my best to Eon.
Will do.
The next person I have signed up is Melissa Brown. Ms. Brown?
Hi, yes, thank you. Oh, I see, it's a timer on the screen. Melissa Brown, 949 Chestnut Street, PhD social scientist and climate activist. Thank you for listening to us. We appreciate the time and effort you are taking to understand how trees affect public health and our community. Saving as many mature, healthy trees as possible is essential to mitigating the deadly impacts of global warming on our community. The citizens' petition was signed by 70 Newton voters. We view this petition as speaking to the ordinance that has been discussed by the Programs and Services Committee for the past year. The petition requests the City Council to pass a measure requiring that any tree ordinance must do 6 things. 1, protect all healthy, not dangerous trees 6 inches in diameter and larger. 2, apply protections on all properties under the jurisdiction of the City of Newton. 3, recognize the significant environmental and health damages that cutting trees does to neighbors and the community by requiring mitigation through replacement trees and/or cash payment. 4, waive such mitigation only if the tree is dead, diseased, dangerous, or if its removal will help the health of the overall tree canopy. 5, protect all trees on lots adjacent to construction. 6, notify abutters of tree removal applications. In short, we, the petitioners, are telling the council that we want the current ordinance revisions under consideration to include these 6 points. In my remaining time, I want to emphasize that even though a tree's trunk may be located on 1 or possibly 2 properties, trees are a communal resource like air and water. We charge significant fines to people who burn garbage on their own property because the science shows that burning garbage pollutes the air breathed by neighbors and the community. I became a climate activist because 2 of my neighbors each cut down an oak tree, one 30+ inches, another 40+. My family immediately felt the impacts. We lived near Boylston Street and the air smelled noticeably more polluted, and one of my kids developed asthma. We have also had to deal with more storm runoff and more heat. Cutting down trees on any one property harms neighbors and the community. The council needs to treat trees as a communal public good by requiring these 6 points in any tree ordinance. Thank you. And I would also like to add that I was told that the petitioners could submit a list of speakers to begin the at the hearing, and I sent that to Ms. Norton this afternoon, and so it wasn't just on the basis of hands, and I'm wondering whether we can revert to that agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. No, I'm going to be taking people as I see their hands and as I have them, as opposed to a list submitted. Thank you. Appreciate you submitting the list, though. It helps with names. Can you just give us your address? I don't think you gave us your address at the beginning.
949 Chestnut Street, and it's Dr. Brown. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. And thank you for your testimony. Next person I have is Steve Tolkien.
Before they start, Mr. Chairman, I just might save time. If people want to supplement their comments with a written document, then we can always take that too. Is that correct?
Yes, true. Thank you, Councilor Baker. Mr. Tolkien, you're still on mute, sir.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yep.
Hello.
Go ahead.
I'm Stephen Tolkien, and I live at 43 Kelvedon Road in Waban, Mass. 02468. I would like to speak against this proposal. I've lived in Newton for more than 30 years. And when I first moved here, there was a tree on the lot, a Scotch pine that dropped. If you're familiar with Scotch pine, it drops needles, it drops pine cones, and it drops large branches. And it did this continually, and it dropped them on my roof in the gutters. And I had it taken out, and I put in a swing set for my kids. And I thought that was a very big improvement. Now, I understand the benefit of trees. I have planted trees. I've paid people to plant trees, and I understand the risks of global warming. But I do not think it is necessary for the city of Newton to pass such a law. There's quite a bit of government interference, and more of that is not necessarily a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just want to quickly remind folks, if you're interested in providing public comments, if you're interested in providing testimony, down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's either an icon that says raise hand, or it might be under a reactions tab. Please electronically raise your hand if you can, and I'll call people in the order in which I see the hands. And again, if you're not able to do that electronically, wave your hand in the window, and I'll try and make note of that. The next name I have is Bob Persons. There, Bob
Hi,
Persons,
my name is Bob Persons. Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
My name is Bob Persons, and I reside at 2396 Commonwealth Avenue in Auburndale. I'm a professional mechanical engineer and have been working to reduce humanity's use of fossil fuels since 1974. I have had a deep reverence for forests ever since I had a chance to visit a rare patch of virgin forest in central New York State in 1972. Before putting solar panels on the roof of our house, we took down 2 diseased ash trees. We also took down a black walnut tree that we had planted before learning that the toxin in the walnut husks would prevent us from growing anything else in our yard, including the native pollinator-friendly shrubs we have now. When my church proposed a parking lot that would require removing 12 hardwood trees, I suggested a solar canopy in place of the trees. That canopy would offset at least 37 times the annual CO2 emissions as those 12 trees would. Anyone who has read The Uninhabitable Earth by David Wallace Wells, or the prediction by James Hansen and his colleagues that a 7-degree centigrade warming is already in the pipeline, quote unquote, will understand that letting one or a few trees prevent a solar array from being built over a parking lot or on a roof would be a short-sighted mistake. I do not think a tree ordinance, or for that matter, an historic preservation ordinance, should be able to unconditionally prevent the installation of rooftop or parking lot solar arrays. While I appreciate the intent of the petitioners, I must point out that the proposed amendment would be counterproductive without exceptions for rooftop and parking lot solar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next name I have is Lynn Mann.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the Newton City Council. First, I'm very, very sorry for the tragedy in your town and your loss, and I'm sorry that this meeting coincides with that. But I do want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My address is 463 Burridge Street in Lunenburg, Mass. But I'm speaking on behalf of the Massachusetts Sierra Club Forest Protection Team. And regardless of some of the conditions, I'm here to encourage you to guarantee that any tree ordinance will protect the city's valuable tree heritage. My understanding is that the committee's current proposal only offers across the city protections to trees with a diameter at breast height or DBH of 40 inches or greater unless property owners voluntarily disclose plans for construction. The citizens of Newton are proposing the city should protect trees greater than 6 inches DBH across the city, independent of construction plans, with some fairly modest qualifications to ensure adherence and equity. Municipal trees are not just nice to have. They are essential for both public health and environmental reasons. In terms of public health, municipal trees improve air quality, which is important for everyone, but critical for residents with respiratory issues. They also provide shade for cooling in the summer. Multiple studies show that heat-related illnesses in urban areas are directly related to tree canopy coverage. Percent canopy coverage in neighborhoods is also correlated with residents' mental health and sense of well-being. Many initiatives across the state right now are focusing on increasing tree equity, including legislation, regulations, and collaborative alliances. This is a moment when Newton has the opportunity to provide leadership on protecting mature trees across the entire city. There are numerous environmental reasons to protect the city's trees as well. Municipal trees contribute to clean water and help to control flooding. They provide habitat for urban wildlife, including birds and beneficial insects such as pollinators. Trees sequester and store huge amounts of atmospheric carbon, which is huge amounts of atmospheric carbon, which is needed in addition to reducing emissions. This is something we simply do not have the technology to do at scale, and trees do it for free. It is important to preserve younger trees as well as older ones, because as trees age, they continuously increase in both diameter and height. The volume contained in the outer rings of the trees combined with the increase in height results in greater carbon storage than the tree acquired the year before, and therefore leaving younger and smaller trees such as 6 inches DBH or greater, excuse me.
Ms. Mann, that's 3 minutes. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up.
Okay, is critical in moving towards the greater capacity to sequester and store carbon. So the Sierra Club strongly endorses the city of Newton to adopt the residents' request to protect trees that are greater than 6 inches DBH. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. The next name I have is Faith Justice. Faith, if you could give us
Hi,
your
and
name and address, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Faith Justice at 44 Churchill Street in Newtonville. I'm going to be reading from the email that I sent to the counselors prior to the June 7th meeting on this subject. In the last 10 years, several very large mature trees have been destroyed by development on 3 adjacent properties and on my own. When Stephen Edsels LLC raised the farmhouse next door to my property at 48 Churchill Street and excavated the whole lot, they tore up the root system of the mature Acer sacrum sugar maple with a DBH of 26 inches that lived in my driveway at the property, front of the property. That maple died 4 years later as a result. It was a beautiful and valuable tree, and I could not get compensation for it. Developers should be responsible for the damage they do to adjacent properties. There is no way that maple could have been replaced in my lifetime either. A large, mature native tree is valuable for carbon sequestration, shade, aesthetics, and natural habitat. Because of other developments on my block, the very old, mature, and healthy Acer saccharinum, the silver maple, much larger DBH than my maple tree, and another native tree was taken down by the developers. Apiceus abies, a Norway spruce, not New England native, but not an invasive species, was damaged and died from development on the property next door to it, which is an abutter to my property. That was also an amazing tree and now gone. I could almost swallow the loss.
Ms. Justice, you muted yourself, I think.
You're muted.
You're still on mute. Ms. Justice, you're still on mute.
Was I on mute the whole time?
No, about the last 15 seconds.
Okay. What I said is I could almost swallow the losses of those trees if affordable housing was being provided. But in all of these cases, the properties were made into townhouses that cost from $900,000 to over $1 million each, which caused this once affordable neighborhood to be out of reach for many families. I request that you take the following steps being discussed tonight in favor of extending protections for all trees. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It is in my email to you, but it is all of the items that are on this this petition. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilor Maliki, your hand is up and you're next. Do you want to let members of the public go? Okay. The next name I have is Julie Winsett.
Hi, sorry, just give me a minute. I'm trying to get my screen going here. Sorry. I apologize.
We got you.
Okay, great. Can you see me?
Can see you and can hear you.
Okay,
All is
perfect.
good. Proceed.
Okay, great. Thanks. Hi, Julie Winsett at 33 Alexander Road. First and foremost, my heart goes out to the families recently struck by the recent tragedy. But just to move to the pertinent topic at hand, the benefits of trees in our urban environment are very diverse and myriad. In the interest of time, I would like to speak to two specific benefits I have the most expertise in. First, as a physician, I wanted to speak to the health benefits of trees. There's extensive data showing the benefits of trees in improving air quality, which is of critical importance for respiratory and cardiovascular health and in decreasing inflammation. Trees decrease heat, and heat waves can be deadly in elderly or frail patients. In addition, a green environment reduces stress and has demonstrable mental health benefits, which translates over into all aspects of health. including cardiovascular, pulmonary, and mental health benefits. These benefits are particularly critical in frail and elderly patients and also for our children who have developing and more vulnerable lungs and immune systems, but they really are critical for all of our health. I can also speak to the benefits of trees as a mother of young children. I have 2 young kids aged 6 and 10, and on behalf of them, as well as all of our children, I beseech you to think of their future. They unfortunately will face the downstream consequences of many of our environmental mistakes and decisions, including climate change, pollution, and deforestation. We're already seeing the consequences of climate change, and these impacts will be quite dramatic by the time our children are adults. Now that the benefits of trees and offsetting some of these dangers are well known, it is imperative that we act now, not just for us, but for our children. I also wanted to speak about personal experiences within my neighborhood. My neighborhood, like many in Newton, has faced dramatic increases in developer teardowns and raisings of properties. In the past year, the property 2 houses down from me was partially raised to build a new garage, resulting in the loss of many mature oak trees. The new owner says he plans to plant new trees and likes trees, but unfortunately the mature trees that were cut down are gone forever and they are irreplaceable. In the past few years, I can name at least 4 other houses within a 1-block radius that were raised by the builder. And this is just one block. And this, yeah. Also, the house directly across from me recently cut down a very large oak tree featured in my background. I would estimate it was 200 years old plus. The reason, the owner wanted to have a green lawn. He was easily able to cut down this healthy ancient tree with no repercussions. And now my children and all of our children and all of us face the fallout of that decision, and he will have no consequence. Butters lost shade, water and runoff protection, a home for neighborhood wildlife, the climate change benefit, and the beauty of this ancient wonder. And a tree of this magnitude was sequestering a large amount of carbon. In summary, I urge you to protect all trees, including those in the 6 to 24 inch range as significant. Impose fees that account for the true consequences and impact to all of us of tree loss. And these fees should apply to everyone and make a 300-foot abutter notification standard. Please make the right decision for our children, our Newton, and our world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Winstead. And my wife grew up on Alexander Road, so I have a very fond place in my heart for that road.
It looks very different than when she was here, unfortunately, but you know.
Indeed. I just want to quickly mention that Councilor Humphrey, who is a member of the committee, he's the Ward 5 representative on programs and services, has joined us. He joined us a little while ago, and I failed to mention that. I apologize, Councilor Humphrey. The next name I have signed up is former City Councilor Barbara Broussard Glazer.
Hi, thank you. Barbara Broussard Glazer, 20 Auburndale Ave. And I'm going to try not to repeat what others have said tonight. I've sent you guys letters and slides from Mark Welch's testimony at Trees for a Public Good. I think what's happening on this committee is that there's a false equivalence between getting people to plant trees and protecting mature trees. And the truth is, as someone said so eloquently, not in our lifetime, right? You cut down a beautiful, big, mature tree, and not in our lifetime will that come back. Certainly in my lifetime, but not even in children's lifetime will that come back. It takes hundreds of years, hundreds of years. And the benefits are innumerable, as you all know. So we have to protect trees on every lot. And I think Councillor Zondervan's testimony was very interesting. Cambridge has not been sued for asking residents to protect the trees on their lots, and it's been a few years now. Also, they make a distinction between what developers pay and what residents pay. These are interesting things that we should seriously talk about, because right now we are exempting 1 to 2 family properties in Newton from what you've been discussing on any tree below whatever it is, 40, 54 inches, which is ginormous. And that's just not going to do us any good as a city. And so we really need to not exempt those properties, which are approximately 64% of the properties on Newton. And we need to bring down that number, which I don't know why Councillor Humphreys went for the 40-inch instead of the 24 that night. It seemed like it was a toss-up, but let's bring it on down to the 24 inches at least, and protect our mature trees, which is crucial. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, the other thing that a lot of people say, right? We don't want to inhibit housing. No, we certainly don't want, we are a community on public transit and we don't want to inhibit housing. Fortunately, Cutting or not cutting a tree on a single family lot is not going to inhibit a housing, affordable or not housing, or not affordable, quite frankly. And Mr. Person should know that there is no, you may not, there is no, you absolutely may not. What we're asking for is that you replace. If you want to put solar panels, fantastic. I have solar panels all over my roof. I managed to prune the large tree near my house instead of cut it down. That was lucky for us. But we can make this work, and we have to protect more mature trees. So this committee can really step it up and do better and not worry about the politics of exempting single-family rich houses in Newton. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. The next name I have is Stephen Farrell.
Thank you,
Farrell?
Chair Chrisman. My name is Stephen Farrell. I live at 30 Winston Road in Newton Center. And for all the reasons that you've heard from many people who spoke before me, I would just like to repeat a paragraph that I included in an email I sent to all of the city councilors today with some photographs. There should be no permanent exemptions from any tree protections for any property in Newton, including 1 to 2 family homes and any cemetery, regardless of its level of arboretum status. Trees may be on private property, but the owners do not have the right to deny the environmental and health benefits that all trees bring to all of us, regardless where they stand. This is an issue of the government's responsibility to protect all citizens from acts by any citizen that will harm the general good of the entire populace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next name I have is Laura Petrillo. And I apologize before you can begin, Ms. Petrillo. Just a reminder to folks, if you're interested in providing your comments down at the bottom of your screen, please click on the raise hand function. It may be under reactions. It depends on your version of Zoom. And if you don't know how to do that, give a wave in your window. And again, I'll try to acknowledge you in the order in which you raised your hand. Ms. Petrillo?
Actually, before I start speaking, I was wondering, you don't have to do this for my testimony because I don't want to see my face big necessarily, but I would love to see everyone else's face on a bigger scale. If somebody could please just take the function of timekeeper so that we could actually see faces and be on Hollywood Squares instead of on the thumbnails, it would be really nice.
You should have the ability to modify the way it appears on your screen and sort of minimize either the content being shared or enhance, either the speaker or the grid. So
Sure.
if that is too big, folks should definitely feel free to do that. But I do think it's good for folks to be able to see that time.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for entertaining public comment. I would just want to really emphasize that that was a big part of the petition, was ensuring that the public had a chance to speak. There was a comment early on that there have been 18 hours or so of deliberation, and many of us who care about this issue have been faithfully attending those meetings and hearing the arguments and really just hoping for what we stated in the petition, which is the strongest possible protections for the trees in Newton. I think the position of trees as a public good is an essential position to take. And one thing that I really regretted about the deliberations was that they immediately launched into line by line analysis of the two proposals, as opposed to agreeing upon a central position of value of trees as a public good and something that contributes to the environment. And we've heard arguments to that effect from the representative from the Sierra Club and from many of the testimonies tonight. Trees provide so many benefits. I personally had a similar story to everyone else's, where I loved a tree. I just loved a tree that was next door to my house, and it gave great shade. It was a beautiful tree, and it was cut down in the course of developing a house, and there were several trees. And there are a handful of us giving these testimonies of the trees that are immediately in our proximity. For every one of us, there are dozens of Newtonians with similar stories of trees that have been cut down a stone's throw from their house. And so when you think about the fact that Newton has lost 50% of its tree canopy since 1975, this is exactly how we got there. And this is the role of government. I know that there is a real concern about impinging on individual freedoms and liberties of houses and their properties, but this is again where the position of trees as a public good and the role of government and the role of city council in acting in the public good and the public health. We are absolutely in a climate crisis. I don't know if you saw my children dancing around. My children are the reason that I care so much. Our planet is burning. We don't really have that much time. We're out of time. And this is something, a free resource that fights climate change in our backyards. And it's absolutely critical that we take this opportunity now and protect it. We can't get those ancient trees back. We can't get the large trees back. We can't create, and I know we will be scrambling to, that's the irony of it. There will be a point in this whole debacle where we are where there are creative things that are being made and, things sent in space and nets or something, carbon capture, and we have trees right here that we're recklessly cutting down for swing sets, for large houses, for gardens, for whatever. And I think I love the idea of solar panels. We can be thoughtful about that. We can be thoughtful about dead and diseased trees. We can be thoughtful about people without the means to pay the fees. So thank you for entertaining. And by the way, my address is 119 Oxford Road in case you need it.
Thank you. I was going to ask the address, so appreciate that. Thank you very much for your testimony. The next name I have, and I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name throughout the night, but Alan Nogi or Nogi.
Thank you, Chairman Princeman. Yeah, I would, Alan Nogi, 48 Kingston Road in Newton Highlands. Yeah, I'd really like to support the citizens petition and the councilor's proposal. Private trees on private land bring public benefits and public costs, and those costs should be recognized. But I have 3 problems with the current proposal, which could easily be fixed with 3 solutions. First, the environmental problems are, even though trees are the keystones of biodiversity, these proposals evaluate the biodiversity benefits of trees as 0. There's no credit for trees that protect biodiversity versus those that cost biodiversity. Second, while they evaluate the short-run carbon and water benefits of trees and find that native trees and invasive trees produce about the same benefits in the short term, they neglect the fact that long-term native trees have much greater carbon, soil, and water benefits than invasive trees. And third, evaluate the benefits of the entire ecosystem except the tree canopy as 0. There's an exception that provides for not having to replace a tree that would negatively affect the health of the canopy, but there's an entire ecosystem below the canopy of understory trees, shrubs, ground covers, and forbs. There's no credit for protecting or enhancing those parts of the environment. The solution is very simple. We should be protecting native trees. This proposal is appropriate for native trees. However, many cities exempt invasive trees from permit and replacement requirements. Tampa and Hillsborough County in Florida, Sacramento and Palo Alto in California, Grand Rapids and Bloomfield Hills in Michigan, Little Rock and Arkansas. Those are just a few that I've found. At the very least, the replacement requirements for invasive trees should be reduced. Second, again, we count the near-term environmental costs, but not the long-term environmental benefits of replacing invasive trees with a minimal number of native trees. There should be exemptions, not only that consider the health of the tree canopy, but the entire local ecosystem, including the multiple layers that will grow up naturally or could be replaced when one plants a native tree.
Mr. Nogi, the 3 minutes are up. I do have to ask you to wrap up.
Please. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. The next name I have is Marcia Keene. Ms. Keene?
Is that working?
Indeed.
Great, thank you. My name is Marcia Keene. I live with my husband at 48 Churchill Street in Newtonville. We're 30+ year residents of Newton. I've also been listening into the deliberations of this group over time. I live just down the street from the recent tragedy, and I'm here tonight rather than there at the school memorial because I think it's essential to protect the trees. I've seen trees cut down on properties adjacent to mine, and I and the neighborhood have less shade, less air quality, and less beauty. So I agree with Melissa Brown and the 6 key points she listed. There's no need to reiterate them, as well as with Laura Petrillo's desire for some policy, overarching policy positions from this group in the City Council. I do hope that Newton follows the Cambridge example. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. The next name I have is Kara Zeki. Kara, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Please set me straight.
You said it perfectly. Thank you. I appreciate, my name is Kara Segi. I live at 43 Highland Avenue, apartment number 3. I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts and feelings about this. I agree with the citizens' petition. I want any tree protection ordinance passed by the City Council. The 6 points that follow, I won't go into that right now. I'd rather share my own personal experience, as so many other people here have done in such a heartful way. I'm going into my 14th year as a tenant on Highland Avenue, near Austin Street, right off Walnut Street, and I am both horrified and heartbroken by the destruction of old growth trees just in my immediate vicinity. I have been living through nonstop construction since before the pandemic, development and destruction of trees. About a year ago, behind me on Austin Street, an oak tree of 4-foot diameter was destroyed, was removed with no warning by a commercial company. I'm still trying to find out why they did that. Many months ago, I came to City Council to beg to save a tree, an oak tree across the street from me on this development of 1.2 million, construction of 1.2 million condominiums that is continuing to be built right now, that I listen to 6 days a week. 6 days a week. I begged the council to save an old growth oak tree, which I found out from arborists could have been relocated at great cost, understandably. That tree and many other trees were removed by the developer. There is basically no backyard there now. All of those trees provided so much for shade for the abutters, for joy for me. I spent every day for many months visiting this tree and meditating with this tree before it was destroyed. I have just completed my, it's very upsetting for me. I've just completed my master's degree in mindfulness studies, which was one of the best things I've ever done in my life, changed my life. I have done forest bathing. I have meditated with trees. There are myriad scientific studies on the benefits, emotional, as was described here beautifully by other people in this meeting, emotional, psychological, and mental health reasons for why we need to save old growth trees. They're gone and they're not coming back. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Zeki. Appreciate it. Next name I have is Jim Trunser.
Yes,
Trunser, go
hello.
ahead.
Yeah, my name's Jim Trunser. I'm at 949 Chestnut Street. I'd like to speak a little to the economic value of trees, particularly mature trees. Newton's known for its shade trees, making it an attractive place to live in part because of that. Trees increase a property's value, but trees add value to the entire neighborhood, to the entire town. Trees are a community asset. They cool the city, they reduce runoff and erosion. And trees, especially mature trees, sequester significant carbon. We need to be preserving them and not burning their cousins in polluting and frivolous backyard fire pits that release particulates and even more carbon. Trees clean the air. Trees increase biological diversity. In short, trees improve a community in many ways, and we need to treat them like a community good. Other towns, as we've heard, have found ways to avoid the unthinking decimation of their trees, to treat trees as a valuable resource. And Newton, in my opinion, has to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trunser. I have two more hands up. I just want to take this moment to remind folks that if you're interested in providing comments, please raise your electronic hand down at the bottom of the Zoom screen. There's either an option to raise hand or it might be under reactions, depending on your version of Zoom. And if you're unable to do that, give a wave to the screen, and I'll try and acknowledge you that way. The next name I have is Margaret Ward.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, start video. Okay.
And now we can see you.
Okay. Thank you. Margaret Ward, 957 Washington Street. I just learned of this meeting last minute, and I'm not really prepared or have a written statement, which is a bit scary, but I will do my best to not ramble. I wanted to make 3 points. First being, with all the talk about climate change, there seems to be a lot of emphasis on electrification and renewable energy, but I feel like we've kind of lost focus on preserving our tree canopy. And it's really, really important for all the reasons that everyone else has mentioned. And so for that reason, I support this petition. We should do everything possible. We should be as aggressive as possible in protecting our tree canopy, locally and globally. The second point I wanted to make is that there's a program. I used to work at the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, and there's a program called Greening the Gateway Cities. And the state spends millions of dollars planting trees in neighborhoods of the gateway cities. And they do this to help alleviate the cost, the burden for like demands of electricity and also electricity and energy. Being that in the summertime, trees provide cooling, not so much also because they provide shade, but they also release coolant. I forget the name, it was a transpiration process, whatever. They release a coolant in the air. One tree is the equivalent of 13 air conditioners. Someone has to give me facts on that, but I can't remember for sure. But and then in the winter time, they provide a buffer. So they break the wind velocity, hence reducing the demand for energy to heat homes. So the state invests invests millions of dollars into planting trees to help communities reduce the cost of electricity and energy. And they also did they did an interesting study in collaboration with the Department of Energy. And they looked at 2 communities in the state where there was a large amount, there was a decimation of trees. The first community they looked at was in Worcester. I don't know if any of you know that they suffered a infestation of the Asian longhorn beetle. And I think they removed thousands and thousands of trees, maples. And then the other area that they did a study was out in the Westfield or Springfield area, where there was a lot of trees in a particular neighborhood community where they were ripped up from the tornadoes that happened a couple of years ago. So they looked at these 2 areas, in particularly in the neighborhoods, and they saw a dramatic increase in electricity used in the summertime to cool, as well as in the wintertime for heating. So these trees provided a huge impact, or sorry, a huge benefit to the communities. So
I have to ask you to wrap up because 3 minutes are up.
Okay. I will, and the last point I was going to make is I have firsthand experience as well with the benefit of trees, and I didn't lose an oak tree, but I live right across from the Mass Pike, and although they were just weed trees, they were very tall. The impact it had when the MassDOT came in and just cut them all down was just unbelievable, and it affected my quality of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Next name I have is Samuel Caraballo.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to briefly share with all of you the actual experience that has led me to be part of this meeting tonight. So I'm writing to testify on the massacre of trees behind our residence at 31 Hill Street in August 2022. Over 25 healthy trees that made up one of the most precious canopies in Newton Upper Falls were ravaged in one day. The consequences of this event have profoundly affected my family in numerous ways, including the loss of precious ecosystems that enrich our communal experiences here in Newton Upper Falls. What adds to the irony of this situation is that the land in question belonged to the late council member Brian Yates, who dedicated his life work to protecting the environment and preserving our community's green areas. The destruction of his precious land contradict his principles and undermine his legacy. We deeply value the presence of what was once a thriving ecosystem, which enhance our daily lives and foster a sense of connection with nature. The destruction of what I call Brian Yates Woods has created a void, negatively impacting our communal experience and well-being. Moreover, the absence of trees has resulted in a tangible increase in the average temperature within our community, particularly our home. The shade provided by the trees was essential in regulating the temperature and creating a comfortable living environment here in our street. The lack of this natural shade has forced us to rely heavily on artificial cooling methods, contributing to higher energy consumption and further environmental strain. This infamous episode of deforestation has also profoundly impacted our children. The presence of a healthy canopy of trees offered them a unique and enriching educational experience. They had the opportunity to learn about nature, biodiversity, and the delicate balance of ecosystems firsthand. Destroying healthy trees for luxury development sends the wrong message to our younger generation, who must understand the importance of preserving our environment. We must prioritize keeping our trees and instill a sense of responsibility and respect for all living organisms in our children. The message is clear: no construction or capital project can compensate for our city loss of healthy trees and life-sustaining resources. We must take immediate action to address this issue. We need stronger ordinances to prevent these tragic occurrences from happening. If a healthy tree is cut down, the responsible party—
3 minutes. I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up. Okay.
So if healthy trees are cut down, the responsible party should be required to plant and replace that tree to mitigate environmental and health damages. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and please consider the importance of taking action to prevent further destruction of our canopy and protect our environmental resources here in Newton.
Thank you. Thank you. The next name I have is Jonathan Beit Aharon.
Very well done. So there's very little to add to what has been said here before. All I can say is, oh, by the way, I live at 566 Center Street. I've lived here for 24 years. My wife grew up in Newton. right in this neighborhood. We're in her elementary school district. We, both of us, mourn specific trees, like many other people who have spoken before me here. And we mourn them both as old neighbors that are gone now, and as a public good. And I strongly urge you to protect the trees in Newton. That's all I had to say.
Thank you very much. Aileen Samud. Aileen Samud. Okay, if you change your mind and want to comment, raise your hand again. Next name I have is Lorenz Glazer.
Hey, Mr. Chairman and Madam President, members of the committee, thank you all for the opportunity to speak here. I really just want to align myself with, it might be a little surprising, I'm going to align myself with Dr. Brown, Mr. Persons, Dr. Nogi, and former Councilor Roussel Glazer, no surprise, as well as everyone who's spoken so far on really the duty that's incumbent on you and the hopes that we have pinned on you as a government body to protect Newton's community resources. I just hope that you'll be brave and enact the strongest possible protection for Newton's community resources. I think I understand it's not too late to incorporate the protections that Mr. Persons was talking about, some of the protections Dr. Nogi was talking about, and still have a really effective and lawsuit risk averse ordinance. And I'm begging you, did you hear Barbara said ordinance? I'm begging you to don't exempt like a for-profit entity like the Newton Cemetery, right? It doesn't make sense. Please, I'm begging you. And Councilor Humphrey, I just want to call your attention. Sorry to put you on the spot like this, but I remember riding on the Green Line with you when you were candidate Humphrey.
Yes.
I'm going to guess it's 2019
Yes.
Earth Day. Remember 2019 Earth Day? I had my middle school age daughter and her friend. We're riding to it was a celebration and a protest. Remember, I remember, I want you to remember your roots. And I'm using that word intentionally. Please step up, be brave. Like remember why you were coming here. And all of you on the council, please just do the right thing for us. We could be leaders. Like, how great will it be to be leaders in this state, in this country, for environmental protections, for something that seems abstract to probably a lot of people, but it's not abstract. It's actually very concrete if you look across the street at these developments that we have, where we lost the tree canopy here. So thank you so much. I implore you, urge you, please do what's right for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Aileen Samud, it looks like you dropped off and came back on.
Great job.
So I want to see if you're able to unmute and give you another opportunity. Okay.
Okay, I'm here. Sorry about that. I think my computer got really excited when I was able to get on. My name's Aline Samet. I live at 317 Newtonville Avenue. I was raised here, left for a little bit and came back. I love Newton. It's always been my home, my pride. And just thinking back to when I was like 10 years old and starting to get aware of Newton's surroundings, I just love that we were called the Garden City. To me, that just meant a lot. I don't know why, as a 10-year-old, it would really matter that much, but I was a tree climber. The trees that I climbed are no longer there, but that's okay because they were not well. So that's a different story. But I really am saddened by the fact that I don't think I see any markings anywhere that we are the Garden City still. And if they're there, they're just not in my pathway as I travel through Newton. I just want us to connect to our heritage of the Garden City. I like what Lorenz said. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. I do implore you to think about how we can take a closer look at the benefit that commercial, or I'm not using the right language here, just businesses that are tearing down. And we're so concerned about housing around here. This is a different story altogether, but we're allowing to put in these huge places that don't allow for trees on the space, on the grounds, on the land. I built a home, and I made sure that not in Rentham, not in Newton, I lived in Rentham, but I made sure that my contractor did not rip out everything. We were abutting a forest, and I wanted my place to look like it was surrounded by trees and not just a black line in back. And I just implore us to really think about what we're doing. And I leave the tree people to make the final decisions about which trees, what trees. I'm not very knowledgeable on that. Although I am part of the Newton Tree Conservancy and also part of the Newtonville Area Council. I'm not able to make every meeting, but I've been following this through Julia, our representative, and I'm here to tell you that we need to think about our trees going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Samet. I have two more hands up, and then I want to remind folks, if you haven't testified or if you'd like to provide comments, please raise your electronic hand through the functionality at the bottom of your screen. Probably says raise hand, or it could be under reactions tab. Or if you're unable to do that, again, give a wave and I'll acknowledge you that way. The next name, Moto G Power. Could you please identify yourself and give us your address?
Hi, I'm on my Android, so I don't know. I've rarely used Zoom on my phone. I am Pat Irwin, and I live in Nonantum, and I care about trees because of the many benefits they provide. There's people have said a lot of the points that I was going to say, so I'm just going to keep it very simple and keep it focus on my own story. There's a crab apple in the berm on my street, which provides canopy, habitat, cools and cleans the air. I have a Nest Cam, which shows me that 90% of the people going by choose to walk on our side of the street because of this tree and a matching one at the end of our property. Also, there's a window overlooking it, which my cat watches the wildlife in it and enjoys it. Let's protect our trees, Newton. They do so much for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Irwin. Could you just, what is your address? Pat Irwin, do you mind, can you tell us your address?
Yes, I just tried to. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yep.
West Street, Nonantum. I thought I said it.
West Street, you said Nonantum, I just didn't know what the address is. That helps us keep track of who's commenting. The last name I have is Adam Lipson.
Hi there. I'll be brief. There's no need for the timer. Look, there's very little that can be said after all the impactful statements that were said tonight. You know, a lot of people have the science more so than me, but I guess I come from outside suburban Chicago, where, as an example, Mr. T purchased a really wonderful house and a really wonderful property and promptly cut down every single tree on the property due to his allergies. It's pretty well documented in the news, and the city lost Tree City USA status. I fear unless the city and this committee is impactful in its legislation, we too will sort of suffer the same fate. If the committee doesn't decide to write impactful, meaningful legislation that has real teeth to it, unlike many of the things in the city, such as the historical regulations, where houses can just be torn down 6 months later after waiting delay. as example, then why bother writing it? Why bother putting forth legislation that doesn't do anything meaningful? Take the advice that you had today, take the public feedback, and write something that challenges people to do the right thing, that forces people to do the right thing. It is impactful for society, not something to just say, we simply have legislation. That's what I'd leave you with. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. I don't see any other hands. Is there anyone else who would like to make comments before we bring this into committee? Anyone who's unable to raise a hand electronically or motion and just wants to unmute and tell me that they can't raise a hand? Okay. Committee members, does someone want to make a motion regarding the public hearing? Councilor Baker?
I've moved to close the public hearing.
Councilor Baker has moved to close the public hearing. Any discussion on that motion? All right, members of programs and services, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Okay. Councilor Wright abstains. Public hearing is closed. President Albright, your hand was up.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I learned a few things tonight that I'm glad I heard. I'm interested in the way the Cambridge ordinance charges a fine, or I don't know whether you call it a fine or a fee, but that's different for residents than for non-residents. And I don't think that we don't have that built into our ordinance. I'd like to know more about that. I also, in our single and two family exemption, I think isn't it only homeowner? Maybe someone could help me there. Isn't it only homeowners or when you own your property? Or could
And
someone-
do not plan construction within the next 24 months.
Okay, so, but if a developer comes in and tears down a house, they're subject to the tree ordinance, are they not?
Correct.
That's what I thought. So, I mean, our exemption is only for homeowners that don't do any construction. So I wanted to be sure about that. But I've made some scattering of notes here of things that I'd like to look more into. Mr. Noji's, I think we've sort of discussed this in our meetings about native trees and whether they have the same value or not. I'd like to have a further discussion on that. So I want to thank these folks for bringing this forward and raising these issues, as we are still in the discussion or the discovery phase of our ordinance. But I think that we've made I would have liked to have heard more from folks about what they don't like about our ordinance. I heard some things, but I didn't hear a lot of other things that I would have liked to have heard what they like and what they don't like about our existing ordinance that we're working on. Be that as it may, I'm going to make a motion for no action necessary on this, only because we're on the verge of working on our own ordinance that addresses the same subject, and that we can further look into some of the things that we heard tonight.
Thank you, Madam President. President Albright has moved no action necessary. All discussion. Councilor Baker.
So thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand the President's motion and I will support it, but I hope the public who are testifying understands that it doesn't mean that the policies that have been discussed are not worth some action. It's just that as a matter of process, we have this process and then we have the other ordinance to work on. In that regard, part of the challenge that we are going to be facing in the main item when we're taking it up is to put the finishing touches on the work that we've done. And several people have commented of the distinction between native and non-native species, for example, is a new one to me as well. Any of these policies ultimately need to be translated into some sort of language. So if those who've offered testimony look at the ordinance, and I'm sure our clerk, Jacqueline Norton, can provide anyone a copy of what we've got so far. If there are specific amendments that we need to reflect on, it's certainly appropriate to do that in that process, if not tonight. And then the other thing I think is really important that we all keep in mind is that the ordinance that we've been looking at involves payment by someone if they are taking down trees that are of a certain scale. It doesn't necessarily preserve the tree from being taken down. And that may be a difference between what the Cambridge ordinance, as I understand it, provides or not. And I'd like to be clear on that distinction myself before we take it up again. But I'm sure that comments can go to Ms. Norton and she can communicate them to us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Maliki?
Yes, I can address a couple of questions about Cambridge. Cambridge has a bright line method of distinguishing who gets the residential rate, and they use, if they have that residential exemption concept in the property tax status, that is something Newton periodically looks at and then decides that it doesn't make sense for us to adopt that the residential exemption status under state law that gives people a break on property taxes. Regarding Councilor Baker's question about Cambridge there, as I understand it, Cambridge does not prevent any tree from being cut down, much as our current ordinance does not prevent any tree from being cut down. It just has a pretty steep recompense requirement for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wright.
I want to come back to President Albright's comment saying that the exemptions for residents wouldn't apply for developers, but when a developer buys a property, they're considered, aren't they? I would expect that they would consider a resident and they would have the same restrictions or allowances that someone who lives there that owns the property.
I think President Albright, I think her point was that a residence is different than the owner. One has a single residence and you have to declare where your residence is. And although you may own the property, you may reside in, Arlington.
Okay, but what's to stop them for the 2 months or whatever to, if they buy the property, move their quote residence to that property until they sell it?
Mr. Chairman, didn't we already discuss this with Mr. Welch about the exact definitions?
Go ahead, Councilor Humphrey. I don't recall the discussion.
We talked about occupancy and the rules around occupancy, and they have to be occupying the property, and they have to occupy it for certainly more than 2 months to qualify for that.
Oh, for the under the exemption language that we were talking about?
Yeah, we had a full evening of discussion about that point.
But I think that's a little bit different than the point they're raising, which is that there ought to be sort of separate charts or compensation based on whether you're a resident or a non-resident.
To me, it sounded like there were two different things getting brought up. It sounded like Councilor Albright brought up that, and then Councilor Wright brought up a different point about the exemptions.
Councilor Wright, do you want to clarify? I apologize if I misstated it.
No, I mean, the exemptions of if someone buys the property and then they move their address, which people do, as that property, does someone has to check to actually see that they're occupying it, even though they're tearing down the property and building another one? It needs to be clear.
Okay. Councilor Ryan, again, we have a motion to NAN from President Albright. In discussion here, Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to speak for a few minutes on this. Today, my day started today with trucks going by, a massive log hauler and shredder from mulch, and they stopped at these two enormous trees at the end of my roadway. I live on one of those little roadways in Oak Hill Park where we don't have sidewalks, and that makes a difference. And I see that Mr. Welch is on this call, and I was on the phone with him and emailing, and I heard somebody else, I remember her first name, so excuse me if I don't use your last name, but Kara, I think said she climbed trees here and everything. These are trees I climbed. These are trees my son climbed. These trees they're huge. I sent Council Maliki some of the pictures today, and I like to say I grew up with these trees. As I've spoken before in this committee, that tree next to me, I grew up with. So I made the call that, are these legal? Because it was right on the curbstone. And I was informed that they were considered part of the property of the homeowner, and they could cut them down. And because it's 4 years probably of a learning experience about how we treat our trees in this city, because my thing before I was on the council was civil rights and social justice. So I've had to learn about a few things, but and I used Council Maliki for that, and Mr. Welch and a few other people. So and I sat down with Melissa Brown one day, and it's so. This is coming from me now. I live in Oak Hill Park, and we have the most tear downs in the city every year. And when they tear down a house, a small little affordable, that used to be affordable house in Newton, in Oak Hill Park, they just seem to clear cut that lot and take every tree down. The point I want to make is that I went back and tried to figure out some of my straw votes, and they've changed. I've come back the other way on seeing that it's more important. And the fact that I talked to a developer today because he ended up in the conversation, and in this case, this house was being, the people living in it were tearing down the little ranch on a slab. And we're going to build, and it's going to be a big house, a huge house with, as mentioned, there'll be no yard left. So you got to get rid of those trees if you're not going to have a yard. And they're going to move back in. So, but this is where I looked and said, wait a minute. So what Council Wright was talking about too is they would automatically be able to do that, but under the new ordinance, they wouldn't. They would be able to cut them down, but they'd be fined or the way I figured it, those trees that they cut down would be about $25,000, and these are huge trees. And this is the only way I know how to talk about this, by the way. Most of the things that you're asking for, we're going to get to as far as I could see. I'm gonna be for. I think it's almost all of them. So I have to go back to what was said earlier by one of the other councils, by Council Noel. It's been 18 hours. To me, it seems longer, but it's over a 6-month period. And we're going to get there, and it's going to be right for the city. And, the developer I was talking to said what I've said behind the scenes. So we talked about it. He said, and his wife grew up in Newton, and he said, I'm building these houses. Yeah, they're going to be going for $3 million, $3 million. And I'm buying the lot for 800,000. And yeah, you're right, Councilor Ryan. These people, when I go in and build a house, they can afford another $30,000 for the trees I cut down. But I'd rather replant them, but that's the way it is. And this is what I've always said. And the two families, which are two families, they're, you know, duplexes, they're whatever. We built two down in the only 5 lots we have that are business B1 here in Oak Hill Park. And the first 2-family in Oak Hill Park since the Newton Housing 2-family, each side 1.5 million. So why does that need an exemption? You know, and I think earlier in the deliberation, I was for the exemption, but I'm not anymore. Because if you can't build affordable housing and it's a 2-family home, then make it a 3-family home and make it affordable. But no, you're gonna pay the same exemption as everybody else. So I hope, you know, I'm voting NAN on this, but I hope you trust some of us that to let us finish our job here. Because I think we're gonna come out the way we want, and I don't believe anybody should be exempt. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ryan. I don't see any other hands up, so President Albright has moved NAN. I will quickly add that I'm going to support NAN for those of you not intimately familiar with the acronyms used by the City Council. That means no action necessary. I'm going to support the motion to NAN the item because I believe that we are making good progress on the other 2 docket items before us. Jacqueline, correct me if I'm wrong. Is it August 16th that we have targeted for our August meeting when we're planning on taking up the other 2 docket items again? I think it's August 16th. And the intention at the moment is to take public comments. We're going to be putting out information in advance of that meeting, which is the progress, the straw votes that the committee has made on those docket items. We'll be soliciting feedback both on the underlying ordinance, as President Albright said, as well as the proposal that the Programs and Services Committee has been working through. And that will all take place before the committee completes its deliberations on the item. So given the fact that the committee still has some work before it, does intend to take up these items and intends to take public comments, I'm going to support NAN tonight. Jacqueline, am I right? Is it August 16th?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So that's the intention now, is that on August 16th, there will be an additional public comment period on those other 2 docket items. Councilor Maliki?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I just made a couple of Ryan's neighbors' trees my background, and I think turn off my video, you can even see that. I'll just duck away. There they are before they were cut down. So just to give you an idea. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. President Albright has moved NAN. All those in favor of NAN, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Okay. I think I have at least 4. Those opposed to NAN?
I oppose.
All right. Abstentions? Councilor Humphrey, were you supporting NAN?
Oh, yeah, I said aye, and Councilor Noel's not here anymore.
Okay, so I think that's 5-1. Do I have that right, Jacqueline? 5-1. Thank you. So the item will be recommended for NAN. That will come up before the full City Council on July 10th. That's the only business we have tonight. So thank you everyone who showed up. Given what the committee has recommended, if the City Council follows that recommendation, we do hope that we see you all in August, again, August 16th. Mark that on your calendars because that will be another opportunity to comment on this very same subject. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Night.